At first, there were a bunch of tribes, and they lived on the peninsula of Korea. These people would later become the Koreans of today, but at those times, they were still just a bunch of people who formed villages, or even before that, they were nomadic people who went from places to places. Eventually, they formed a kingdom, which is not the advanced kingdom that we know today, but more like a collection of chieftains, which has one biggest chieftain to command all of them. They had relations with China of the time, of the Chinese dynasty of the time, and they had activities such as they would import stuff and export stuff. They would buy from China. They would import silk and bronze and stuff like that, while they would export agriculture and minerals. When jumping again, we are at the Three Kingdom era. So there were three kingdoms in Korea also. You might have heard that China has a Three Kingdom era. The Three Kingdom of Korea were consisted of the Silla Kingdom, the Goguryeo Kingdom, and the Baekje Kingdom. You can look up the picture online. Each of them contested for power to become the one who would unite Korea. And if you look at the map, the Goguryeo Kingdom is gigantic. And if you look at the three of them now, if you look at the three of them on the map and consider all three of them combined as Korea, the map of Korea would actually be extending all the way to Manchuria, or part of China right now. This is because Goguryeo or Goguryeo, I don't know how to say it, is actually a nomad kingdom, kingdom of nomads, and they came from Manchuria, or you may have heard of the Mongols. The Goguryeo are basically a strain of Mongols. You may have heard of Mongols, Turks, basically horsemen. Goguryeo are also horsemen, and they came from the plains around northeastern Asia. And the reason they are considered Korean, that is, they are considered the three kingdoms of Korea, is because Goguryeo eventually moved their capital to today is Pyongyang, which is the capital of North Korea. That is why Goguryeo is considered a Korean kingdom, because they liked staying in Korea, the Korean area, more than in Manchuria, or what is today China. The one who would unite the three kingdoms and eventually Korea is the Silla kingdom, and they would lead the Korean nation until for quite some years, and the capital would be in the Silla area, which is the southeast of Korea. Going forward some years, there would be a dynastic shift, and the dynasty was changed into the Yi dynasty. The important part of this is that the Yi dynasty changed the religion of Korea from Buddhism to Confucianism. Confucianism. Confucianism, you probably know, came from China. It's the thinking of the Chinese. But the Koreans, they studied it so much and they loved it so much that they decided to make Korea all about Confucianism. They decided to make it the way of the Korean people. So starting from the court, from the kings and the people who work in the government, all the way to the people, they started implementing the Confucianist ideology. Not even in China has this been done, and this led to the most Confucius society in all of history. So Koreans were actually more Confucius than China. Eventually, China got overrun by barbarians, those horse people, not the Mongols, but another one. Or was it the Mongols? I forgot. They got overrun by another barbarian dynasty, while the Koreans held out. They weren't overrun. That the Koreans felt like China was a barbarian kingdom now. They were run by barbarians, and Koreans just didn't relate to the Chinese anymore. Whereas in the past, they've always been treating China as the place to study from and the place to receive culture. And then looking to the east, Japan was run by people who would mingle with women very freely. So, according to, to Confucius ideology, women were subservient to men. And, the Confucius ideology is about responsibility, right? The son to the father to the whoever is leading the father, say the city to the governor, the governor to the king. It's all about responsibilities of you to the one above you and what the people above have to do for the people who believe in them, stuff like that. And according to Confucius ideology, women should just be subservient and stay at home. Before Confucius ideology, women mixed freely with the men in Korea. In fact, one of the most mixing freely societies ever. Not ever, but they were very freely mixing with the men. This was eradicated by Confucianism. But on the other side, on Japan, the women were mixing freely with the men, and the Koreans just got weirded out by them. So on the west, they have China, which is barbarian, and on the east, we have Japan. They had Japan, which is weird. They're weird neighbors. And they just felt like, you know what, I'm not gonna listen to any outsiders anymore. I'm just gonna stay with myself. So they closed all borders, and no one would be allowed to speak to any foreigners ever again. That was the rule. Well, eventually they did speak to other people. That was the rule. So people from other countries, if they want to do something in Korea, they would be secluded in a building and they would not be allowed to talk to the Korean people. And then came the I'm running out of time. Okay, basically after that, the Japanese occupied them, and then in World War II they got freed, and they wanted to make their own country. Right? Them, nice, it's free. We are free now. We want to make our own country, but no. The Soviets divided their part, U.S. their part, and then Korea became divided. And then until now, Korea is still divided, even though they've always been a single society from back in like the Goguryeo, the kingdom era. So which is really sad. That was the history of Korea.